Kלים Perek Gimel Mishnah Base. We mentioned in the Mishnah Aleph that the basic shear for Kli Cheres, the hole which renders a Kli Cheres a Shevek Kli in his Torah, as long as it's a Kli Cheres which is made for Oichlin, the shear is always a Moitzi Zayis. Says the Mishnah, however, let's take a Chovis. A Chovis is made for fruit, and it's made also. There's different ways of learning this Mishnah. There's the Vilna Gaon, the Gra, and there's the Tosis Yom Tov. We learn with the shit of the Tosis Yom Tov. It's a little bit easier to follow through the whole Mishnah this way. It's made for specific fruit. And the Mishnah has got a three-way machlokas between Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Meir. It's easier with the way of the Tosis Yom Tov because the three fruits mentioned in the Mishnah are actually working down in size. So Groigris is the biggest, Egos is the middle, and Zaysim is the smaller. Says the Mishnah, Chavi shiura begroigros divrei Rabbi Shimon. You use the bigger hole, the shear of a moitzi groigros, which is a chumra, a dried fig. Says Baal Tanura, reginim hoyu lo niach groigros bechavis. There's different ways of learning this reginim hoyu. The way the Tosis Yom Tov learns it is that it wasn't the main use for a chavis, but it was also a use. A chavis could be used for groigros as well. And we go bosa miut tashmishay lechumra, although it's mainly used for something smaller, but because the chavis is also used for groigros in particular, as opposed to other fruits, therefore we go lechumra, although it's only a miut tashmishay, and that's the shit of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda be'egoizim. He used the middle shear, which is egoizim, which is nuts, which is the main use. The roiv tashmishay of the chavis was done for egoizim, so we go boss of the roiv tashmishay bein kula bein chumra, and we don't use the bigger hole because that's only a miut tashmishay. And Remeya bezeisim. And Remeya says no, doesn't make a difference. The rule which we mentioned in the first Mishnah, that all kelim which are made for oichlim, there's a shura, it's a moitzi zayis, applies here as well. It doesn't make a difference, l'kula or l'chumra, it's always bezeisim. This way of learning the Mishnah is a little bit difficult because normally a groigros is the main use of a chavis, and the Gaon learns differently. He actually makes the order of the size of the fruits different. He puts egos the biggest, then groigros, and then zeisim. But that's a different way, and you've got to change the girsa later on the Mishnah, so we'll go back with Tosis Yom Tov's view. First, groigros is bigger, and Rabbi Shimon is being machmir. He's going bosa rov tashmishay, bosa miut tashmishay l'chumra. Rabbi Yehuda goes bosa rov tashmishay, which is egoizim, and Remeya says we don't go bosa any specific tashmish. We just use the general rule. Keli also la'ochlim is bezeisim. The Mishnah carries on alefes v'akadera shiur and bezeisim. This is the rule we had before Mishnah Aleph. Alefes and akadera, cauldrons and pots, are actually made la'oichlin ula mashkin. And where we have a keli which is made la'oichlin ula mashkin, we go la'chumra, the hole has to be big enough to be a moitzi zayis, not the smaller hole of a koinis mashke, and that's why the Mishnah says here, shiurim bezeisim. Then the Mishnah moves on to pach v'hatafi. These are jars, a pach is a jar, and a tfi, something with a very small opening, a very small aperture where when you turn it upside down, the drops come out. Tofi's loshen tippa, the drops come out drop by drop. Here, shiuron b'shemen. Although we said normally that the rule for kelim which are osel and mashkin is a rule of koines mashke, of mayim, but because we're dealing here with a kelim which is basically meyuchet for shemen, so here the koines mashke instead of mayim is the koines mashke of oil. That means if you take the kli and immerse it or put it in oil, then the oil would leak into the kli from the outside. Baal Tanura says that oil is thinner than water, which means that using a koines mashka of shemen as opposed to mayim would actually be a chumrah because you need a smaller hole. Sorry, it's a kula because it means that a smaller hole would already be matayirid. However, the Chazon Ish says there's a toss in the Baal Tanura, and in fact it proves that oil is actually thicker than water, and therefore here we're actually going to chumrah that the hole has to be a koines mashka of shemen in order to make it tahor. That tzaratzur was the keli which we mentioned at the end of Perek Beis. it's a keli used for drinking water, but it's got a netting over it, so the water only comes out. If you turn it upside down, the water only comes out in drops. Shiura b'mayim. Here we go back to the normal shir of mayim because the tzarator is made for mayim. This is actually quite a simple din, the tzarator shira b'mayim. The reason why it's brought here is because the next time in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon is actually going to argue in all of these and introduce a chumrah, and that's why tzarator is mentioned, although be'etzim it's a pashut din. Rabbi Shimon Omer, shloshtom bezeronim. The way we learnt before in the Reish of the Mishnah, that Rabbi Shimon was actually very machmir by saying that you go bosa miyat tashmishai l'chumrah, that a chavis you have to wait till it's a moitzi groigris before you can be matayr it. This is Rabbi Shimon Shitose that because the above, when he says shloshton, he means the pach, the tfi, and the tzaratzur, because they are sometimes used for zeroidim, to put seeds in it. So now the shir, you go lechumra, although it's only a miyot tashmishoi, and you've got to have a hole big enough to be moitzi the zeroidim. Whereas the koines mashke doesn't make it tahor. That's Rabbi Shimon's view, shloshtam bezeroinim. Ner, a lamp in which you have oil and you put a wick and it lights, it's a lamp. Again, shura b'shemen. Like pach and tzvi, because it's made specifically for shemen, and so now the ner will only become tahor if the hole is big enough for shemen to leak in, koines mashke of shemen. Rabbi Eliezer Omer b'fruta katana. There is a girsa which Bartanura has. This is the same. In fact, instead of Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Shimon. It's the same Rabbi Shimon as the previous one. Rabbi Shimon Omer shloshtem bezeronim who are in here, because sometimes a ner is used, although it's a mil tashmisha, it's used for coins. So Rabbi Shimon goes bosa mil tashmisha l'chumra, and he says, although you've got a hole big enough to be koines mashka, but because the hole is not big enough for a coin to spill out of it, therefore you haven't not yet got a sheva kli. You'll only have a sheva kli when the hole's big enough for a coin to come out. You go bosa mil tashmisha l'chumra. That's Rabbi Shimon Shitose. So that's three. According to this girsa, it's 3 times Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah is saying the same thing. And the Mishnah carries on, ner shenitel pivtar. You have a lamp, and the edge, the rim of the lamp is broken. So that's enough of a sheva kli because it can't be used as a lamp, it's tohar. True, of course, you probably have a teiras gistra in what's left behind. In other words, although it's tohar because it's a sheva kli, but you can be miyached, you can still be miyached, according to the Rishonim who hold that gistra needs yichud, you can still be miyached the remnants, the base of the kli, of the ner, to be mekabel tumah lahabo mutaras gistra. But certainly ner shenitl piv, as it is tor, that's called the sheva kli, because now the lamp can't be used. Sharadoma, a ner made out of not of klicheres. It's still clay, made out of earth and clay, but it hasn't yet been baked in the oven. Remember, klicheres has to be something which is a keli made out of clay or earth, and it only becomes a klicheres if you fire it in an oven. But if it's made just out of adama, it says godeno klei adama, it's not mekabel tuma. Says the Mishnah, shehusak piv bivsila. But if the top of the keli, of the lamp, has been lit so many times by the wick, by the burning wick, and therefore the top of the rim of the ner shel adama has now been blackened and fired by the lamp, by the fire of the lamp itself, tahor, because that's not called tziruf kivshon. To make it klicheres, you have to take earth and fire it in an oven completely, not just by burning the edges with the flame